Welcome back to Let's Chat Creative Pathways podcast. I am your host, Beth Bailey, and I am here to talk with you about all things creativity, creative lifestyles, pathways we take throughout life. And sometimes I have interviews, sometimes I'm doing solo chats, just catching up, and sometimes we have a little special edition like we do today, where I am going to deep dive into one of the grant-funded programs that I recently completed with one elementary school, and I am continuing for another few sessions with another elementary school. So if you have been following along, you know that a lot of my programming is funded from Massachusetts Cultural Council grants, sometimes local cultural council grants where I'm applying to individual towns, and sometimes to the Massachusetts Cultural Council itself for the Creative Projects for Schools grant. So the program I'm going to be talking with you about here, if you're viewing from my garden, this is a painting behind me that I'm working on right now of my garden. I'm having so much fun with it. I can't wait to get in there, but I've really wanted to record this and capture it while it's all very fresh for me. So check out the painting behind me, and also another good reason to watch this because I'm going to have examples of some of the work that was made during this program. So this program we called Greetings from Duval Elementary, and the way it began is I had an idea to bring a large-scale community greeting card project to the elementary school in my town. So I reached out to the principal, and I had a feeling this was going to be a productive meeting, and I had someone that was going to be a good person to be receptive to this idea, because this principal had brought in a visiting artist to work on a large-scale collaborative mosaic with the students the previous year. So I knew that arts were a priority in the school, and I had actually volunteered to help out one of the days with that artist, and it was just a fantastic experience. I know that the principal had worked with this artist at other schools he had worked at as well, so I was really excited to learn from the artist that day I volunteered, and also learn from the principal about how he has seen these large-scale collaborative community projects unfold. So I'm going to be taking you through sort of step by step how this program was developed, how it was rolled out, how I ran the classes day to day once I was actually in there and on site, and how it is continuing now, how I've incorporated other schools and other community groups into this same project that we're all working on together collaboratively. So if you're in community arts education, if you are, I guess, even working in schools, if you're interested on large-scale collaborative community projects, this is a great episode for you, because I'm going to be deep diving into the nitty-gritty of how these things all come to be. Okay, so I knew I had a receptive audience, reached out, and had a meeting. So during that meeting, I had already identified that we could get a large portion of this funded through a grant. So that's always something I'm thinking about, not just the idea, but how is this idea going to be funded, right? So I went in knowing that there was a $5,000 grant that applications were going to be coming up for in a couple months. Right now in Massachusetts, those grants, I believe, are open. The Creative Projects for Schools grants, right now, it is early March 2026. Last round, when we applied, I believe the applications had to be submitted early April, even April 1st. So this meeting we were having, it had to have been in like January, February. So we are on site having this talk, already have an idea and a look at funding possibilities. And the next part of the conversation doesn't go right into, okay, what is the project? What is the actual art? The next part of the conversation for me is I like to hear about what their interests are, um, and sharing some of my core values and then developing a program around that. So, some of my core values are letting everyone know that everyone is creative, and it just comes through in different ways for different people. But early exposure to the arts, early exposure to anything really is fantastic because then it just opens up these doorways earlier for you that you know you can go down. So I'm really interested in highlighting different creative paths people have taken, right? This is why I'm doing interviews. And that's something that immediately resonated with the principal, Dr. John Marcus, at this school. He was very interested when I was talking about working with a variety of local creatives. So that was something he grasped onto. And I was able to follow up and say, yes, I know many creatives in my community who would be more than willing to come in, get paid for a day working on site with these kids, share some of their artwork, and work alongside us on the project. Now, the community aspect of us all working together on a project is something that I love doing, working collaboratively. And then where is the art going, right? So for this, like I said, this is a greeting card project, greetings from Duval Elementary. So the idea was that all of the students would be beginning at least two greeting cards. There would be sessions where they would be working on the front, on the interior, um, and maybe also sessions where they're just sort of like zhuzhing up and making everything just seem really fantastic and ready to go to the next level, getting some text on there. There's a pop-up element to the cards we ended up doing. There's a couple 3D components there. So each session I had the kids, we could be working on these different components until, I would work with some of those groups 2, 3, even 4 times, and so some of those students really got to know all the different parts of the process, and then they could work in a way where they could grab cards that were completed in different phases and just move them on to the next step. So that was the idea for the collaborative making that the school would all be working with together. And then where are these going, right? Are we framing them? Are we just sending them home with families? What's the next step? So I suggested we could make community focused cards since we're talking about community. We're bringing artists in from the community, and we could send these out to community helpers. And of course, the first groups that come to mind are people who are in the town services, our police, our fire, DPW, town hall. But they actually told me that the elementary school, different grades had already done some card projects where they've sent out things to all of these important groups in the community. And so that got me thinking that there's another level, right? Like who else in the community? The local pharmacy, the local karate studio, the dance studios, all of the volunteers running the sports programs. And so we started coming up with this list, even the elderly assisted living home in town, the food pantry, all these different ideas started coming up in the meeting. And I thought, you know what, this is a great starting point, but we can actually open it up to the students as well. So now we have a little bit of a plan going. We're going to be working with each student in the school, making 2 cards. They're going to have an experience with a visiting artist in addition to myself, another visiting artist coming in. So I started brainstorming that list. They'd be working in different elements. So now the students are also being exposed to the idea of working on a production line, which is very relevant to art making, right? You look at large scale sculptures that are done. Dale Chihuly, a glass artist, has a whole studio of glass artists who work for him. And that's how they're able to make these enormous projects, right? Everyone's working together. Um, Also, I work on production teams just for my own art making. If I get a big order for pottery that I need to make at a certain deadline, I'll hire friends to work on that with me. So maybe I'll be creating the pieces or I'll be doing the glazing, someone else be adding the handles. We can all make a different part of it. And otherwise, I wouldn't be able to take the job. Otherwise, Dale Chihuly might not be able to make so many of these gigantic, beautiful installations with glass the way he does. And this rolls out to many artists. You have painters even who have studios where they employ people and they train them exactly how they like paintings made, and they'll have discussions with them and say, next time you're having a studio day, I really want these different things to happen in the design. Then that painter that's hired can do that while the lead artist who has the vision is directing it, can be working on something else. Um, so this is a relevant thing today in the art world. It's not just you're working in a factory. A lot of those jobs aren't around, unfortunately, anymore. Um, Although we have turned a lot of the buildings in this region into art studios, so that is great. But yeah, so we get the students working in production, and we are going to be sending these out to community members, asking them who's important to them, who's a key player in the community for them. And now we get to the point where we're thinking about theme, right? So this is still the first meeting I'm in with the principal and also the assistant principal at the time, Ashley Craig. We're sitting down, kind of like brainstorming what the messages might be. And I wanted something that was a visual inspiration and also hit on the idea of community. I don't remember how this idea came to me, but I decided to go with, on the front of the cards, it would say, "In the fabric of our community." And then the inside, it'll say, "You are an important thread." So that allowed me to then start developing the plan for, okay, what are the prompts? What am I going to be teaching the kids aesthetically, right? So a very multi-layered process here. So to go along with this, what I decided is I would teach them how to make a faux woven pattern, right? A woven pattern going in and out, talking about how each individual thread is an important part of a fabric, right? If you tear a thread out from a fabric, you get a rip, you get a hole, you get a run. It's no good. So I would be able to start with that. And then the interior is where it will say, "You are an important thread." And we actually cut pieces of yarn and thread and put it in there. And as we got closer to the program, I was talking to some of the visiting artists. One of the visiting artists who worked alongside us is my long-term artistic mentor and very dear friend, Pam Golden, who's been teaching me about art making, just living and watching her example since I was a very small child. And Pam has run arts programming at both the Inley School, a Montessori school in Norwell, and also for several years running art programming at the South Shore Charter School, also in Norwell. And she had shared with me that she did pop-up cards, very simple pop-up card program that she ran with her school. So she showed me how to do that, and we were ready to go. So the whole plan was in place. And then the next thing was to get tentative confirmation from the artist. So if you've listened to my other talks on grant funding, something I say is you get the plan all into place, but you don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, get too into detail. So the amount of detail I have right now gives the school an idea of, okay, if we're going to run this program, we kind of have an idea of what we're getting into. tangibly what they're going to be making, who's going to be involved, um, what the distribution is gonna look like, etcetera. And the next step is getting some artists tentatively on board, because if we don't get funding, we don't do the program, right? So it's important to me that I don't waste my time or anyone else's time. So I put together a draft of an artist brief explaining what the program was going to be, what the expectation would be for on site. So the way I designed this program was according to the budget. So I knew we were going to have potentially $5,000, and we were going to go over that. The total requirements were going to, I think, be around $6,500. And so I had the idea of applying for a supplemental grant through the town local cultural council. And then there would also be an opportunity that we could reach out to the PTO and see if we could access some of their funding. So through all of that, and then I figured out that we could accomplish all of this program in 10 site visits plus 1 additional day for an evening for family night. Because we also in the meeting decided we wanted to use this as an opportunity to bring the school together as a community as well. So, um, just to backtrack a little, that's why the students were all making 2 cards. So at the end, there would be enough greeting cards so that every student who attends the school would be able to take one home. And then also one would be able to be sent out into the community as well. So we had the family night where the families were all continuing work on the production line that the students at this point had already seen me a bunch of times. They knew how to do it. They were showing their parents how to do it. It was great. And then all the finished cards were hung on display, and every family could take as many cards as they had students in the school to take home with them, to keep, to give away. And one really sweet thing is I saw on the town Facebook page, one of the students had decided to bring hers to the police. So the police did end up getting some love after all. They were really nice. They took a photo with her and the card and shared all that. So it was nice to see that one student decided to send it out there. So yeah, so okay, so we're doing the artist brief now. So I have the artist brief saying each of the I decided it would be 5 artists. So I would be solo 5 of the days, and 5 of the days I would have one of the visiting artists working alongside me. So they would have 1 full school day, and then all 5 artists were expected to all be at the family night together. At the family night, they could be working with families, and they also had a table set up displaying their own art. Because it's important to me, like we said in the beginning, one of my core values is letting people know that there are pathways to artistic lives. There's all different ways to do it. And we need our grown-ups to know this too, right? Um, your child wants to go into the arts, and many people reasonably want to know, what exactly does that mean? What's your plan here? And so it was a really good opportunity to have all these different artists there saying, "Oh, this is what I do. This is what I do." So I got my artist brief together, explaining what the pay would be, what the schedule would be. We didn't get down into doing exact dates yet because, again, might not get funding. So we're just putting it out there as much as we can. I was so excited that all of the artists I invited were an immediate yes. And I did have one artist who did have to bow out for medical reasons, for family reasons. But the next person I asked to replace her immediately said yes. So it was really exciting that everyone was so excited to come and work with me. And honestly, this is a paid gig, right? That's another thing that's really important to me, is that we're paying artists for their work, because I think most of us would be doing a lot of these things for free. I think a lot of us do still do these things for free or are slightly underpaid, but oftentimes it brings so much joy. It balances out, or maybe not. But either way, I didn't want to contribute to that problem. Now, the Creative Projects for Schools grant, I think it's actually called the Creative Experiences grant now. That grant needs to be submitted by the organization, by the school. So we looked up the information that was going to be required to submit this grant, and I wrote up all the details. So that is something that I've practiced. I've been writing grants for years. And although I know the principal has as well, I know the principal's very busy. Your principal's a very busy job. And so that's another thing that I always like to offer to my clients is that I'll do the grant writing. I feel confident about grant writing. I can do it very quickly, very efficiently. And at the end of the day, it's my program that I'm pitching, right? So I'm going to know how to best represent what the goal is here. So I wrote it all up for all the items that we would need and sent that to the principal. The principal then had to go in through his account, through the Mass Cultural Council, plug everything in, and he also had to submit some demographic information that is required to be filled out on these applications, sent it away, and that was that for a while. I mean, this was April 2025 that we submitted this. And in September 2025, we found out that we did receive the $5,000 grant. Very excited. This is always the moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, now we actually have to do this thing. So this is when it gets time to get more deep into the details. Let all the partners know, let everyone know we're go. Start talking about dates, start figuring out logistics. Where in the building is this going to be happening exactly? And all those details. Also looking at the supplementary budget, right? Because we were going to be short. So um, at that point, so that was in September. So then October is in Massachusetts when you apply for the local cultural council grants. So those are the grants that each individual town decides how their allotted local cultural council money can be spent. So I submitted an application to the Whitman Local Cultural Council requesting, I believe it was another $500, and was hoping to get that. And then I held off before talking to the PTO about looking for the additional funds. So we're in September and just applying for some more money, booking dates. I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to order supplies. So there's 400, like about 420 students. So I had to go ahead and order about 900 blank greeting cards. And let me see, I have one of the boxes over here. Oh, Hoo is the brand that I buy for these greeting cards. I get them on Amazon. It's OHUHU. If you're looking for blank greeting cards, I love these ones. They're good. They're sturdy. They come with the envelopes because that is important to me too, right? We're not just making these cards to pass around. We want to really be able to gift them properly, put them in the proper envelope, send them in the mail, hand them to a friend. But either way, we want a nice professional finish. So we got the greeting cards ordered, and then I also had to put in additional materials orders for more paint markers because this was going to be a big paint marker project. Glue sticks. The string is stuff that I just had in my studio and I used. But the goal here also is to not create um, a, a material suck on the school itself. We all know that schools are strapped for cash and materials are meticulously planned out in order forms by the teachers and the art teachers alike. So I wanted to make sure we had all of the materials ourselves. So I get all my materials orders in. And the next step is a little bit more of a waiting game, right? We're waiting to hear about the supplemental funding. So the next funding notification happens in January. And we knew this was going to be a program that happened in the spring, so we knew we had time to wait. Unfortunately, we did not receive the local cultural council grant for the supplemental $500. And also, unfortunately, about a month before that, I believe it was in December, I think it was shortly before the holidays, we found out that this school district was over $1 million in debt. So that was a blow. And that is my home school district. So that's been something that's been quite a shock to everyone in the community. And as a parent um, in this school district, um, that really had to be factored in. This work is my job. I do volunteer work outside of my job. I volunteer when I can for the school. I even volunteer through my business, my nonprofit business. I try and fundraise and supplement my time, but I do what I can, right? Um, but this was a huge blow. This was a huge blow, being so deeply in debt. Teachers had to be let go. Teachers who had been in classroom with their students all year had to be let go. Many of the support structures we had in the form of paraprofessionals gone. Very distressing time financially in the district. So I'm looking at my program and I'm like, okay, we didn't get the $500 supplemental um, money. And now I don't feel comfortable asking the PTO for additional money. I don't know how I would have felt if this was in another town. If it weren't my home district, I'm not sure. I can't tell you. Um, I may have just eaten the cost anyway, but I did decide confidently that I wanted to absorb the um, I think it was about like $1,100 shortfall. So I decided to absorb that, as see it as a donation, take it out of my overall pay, and that did not affect any of the materials costs. That did not affect any of the pay that the visiting artists were getting. I just decided to take that out of my end. There's other things I could have done. If it was another school district and I didn't feel comfortable saying, okay, I'm donating my money, my hour, donating essentially free hours of labor, then I could have cut one of the visiting artists potentially. Um, we could have maybe tried to dip into the school's materials supply. There's different things that I could have tried before just calling the program and deciding not to do it. But in this particular circumstance, this is my family, school, community, and I felt comfortable and still feel comfortable and satisfied with my decision to go ahead and absorb that cost. So, we're talking about these art programs, these fun collaborative community art programs, but there are a lot of these difficult decisions to be made. And I just, yeah, you look at the business of it all, but listen inside. What's going to feel right? What's going to feel the best? How am I going to look back on this and be pleased with my decision going forward? So once that decision was made, we got some dates on the books, and I scheduled all the artists. The material started arriving, and we're ready to go. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about day to day, and I want to get into this a little bit in depth because this is a program I might want to run again, and I'll listen back to this so I can make sure that I hit on everything. And also, if anyone else is interested in running a program like this, I want to let you know basically what my intro was. I was working through K through 5 and meeting with them at least twice, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 times. And so, yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the intro. So I'd get a group of kids in and I would welcome them in, give them a big warm welcome, let them know my name. Hello, my name's Beth Bailey. You might recognize me here. I'm a Duval parent and aunt, so you may have seen me around. And what we're doing today is we are going to be starting a collaborative community project. We're going to be working all together, and we're going to be making about 800 greeting cards. And the kids all loved this. They're like, oh my gosh. And so that was a good way for me to start talking about, like, okay, what does collaboration mean? What is community? And tell them a little bit about what would be happening with these cards. You're going to be starting a card today, and someone else is going to be finishing it. You're going to be doing step 1. Someone else is going to be doing step 2. Someone else is going to be doing step 3. They're all going to be jumbled up together. Now, this is a difficult concept for a lot of people, including elementary students, maybe in particular, because they're used to starting a project, finishing it themselves, and taking that one home, right? That's not happening here. So I really wanted to make sure they knew that. So it was good to talk about it in steps. So not saying, your card is going to be finished by someone else, or not your card is going to get started, someone else will help you finish. We're all doing different steps. Today, we're working on step 1 on all of these cards. Next time I see you, we're all going to be working on step 2 on these cards. Now, something that I did find is I didn't always see the kids in order. So sometimes the first day I was meeting with the group, they were working on cards that had already been started, right? Because as I mentioned in the intro, this project isn't just happening within this one elementary school. I also work at an apartment building with independent living 62 plus people. They're wonderful. They started these projects. So I had a day there where they were working on the fabric texture, drawing the fabric texture on the front of the cards. And I also went to another elementary school, and they were working on some of these as well. So some of the kids were coming in and working on the second part, and I found that actually helped a lot with the processing of, oh, I'm not just making one card start finish. So it was actually really nice to have some of the kids start on step 2 instead of step 1. But anyway, okay, so the kids were in step 1. I'm telling them, the fabric of our community. I actually had fabrics out on each of their tables. So I had beautiful blue sparkly fabric. I had a fabric with a really loose weave. I had just like fabric you would use to make clothing out. And I would tell them, okay, look really closely at the fabric at your table, like you have a microscope. Do you see the lines going up and down and across? That is called the warp and the weft. So now we're introducing some new vocabulary, talking to them about how fabric is made. You have all of these threads going up and down, and now you have the other threads going across, in and out. I used the smart board so I could draw examples. And I may have some photos. I'll look through, and hopefully I have some good photos of the things I'm talking about, and I'll put on the video here. So definitely take a look, either Spotify or YouTube. You should be able to see the video of this podcast with those examples. So I would tell them, okay, so today you'll notice on your tables, you have all cool colors, or maybe it was all warm colors, but I gave them one or the other. What are cool colors? What are warm colors? Another little part of the conversation. And um, then I would go through the demo and show them, okay, so this is how you would draw the warp. It's lines going up and down, but they're not just going up and down, right? Because fabric, when it's on the table, you see it's kind of curved all around. So there are these lines, but they're kind of wiggle lines going down. And what would make them look even more like fabric, like they're going up and down? Dashed lines, right? So now I'm asking them to make a grid of curvy lines going up and down, curvy lines going across, and all of those being dashed. So now we're talking about curved lines, we're talking about dashed lines, more tools that they can use. And this is something I would tell them too. Hey, you can learn how to draw this fabric texture. You could use it on anything. If you're doing a drawing of a person, you can use this texture drawing to make their shirt. You can make an animal that looks like it has woven fabric skin. That might be interesting, or fur. And so would get through that demo. And just to another thing I would do is what I'll tell you next, but I think I told before. It's more like in my intro, because what I'm telling them, you could put it at the end here too, I guess. But what I'm telling them is we're here to work as a community. We're making these cards. There's going to be the family night. We're going to be sending them out, all that. But one of the other things I really want you to know is that you can be a working artist here in our community. You can also move. You can go to places like New York City or Paris and work in these big art centers where many people from around the world move, but there are artsy jobs you can find here. And then I list off a bunch of the jobs I've had. I tell them I was a sign painter at Trader Joe's. I taught art classes at YMCA. I do window painting for businesses. I go and I paint their windows, different things. I like having lots of jobs. That's fun for me. I like being an entrepreneur. And I also make pottery. So I work in a production team making large orders of pottery for businesses who then either sell or gift the pottery that I make. So it's fun kind of showing them a little bit of that, of the inside info. And what am I doing here? This is my job. I'm here. This is my job today. I get to work with all you. I'm also a community arts educator. And I've been doing lots of painting lately. So I would bring, I had some of my pottery and I had paintings that over the course of the few weeks that the 10 sessions rolled out over, I kind of changed out the paintings, or especially if I'd been working on the paintings at home too. So then some of the kids could see the changes. And then I would point out my paintings, that I had one painting that had a mistake on it. And I pointed that out. I was like, what do you guys think? Do you see this drip here? Total accident. And that was a really good opportunity to talk about how mistakes in art making don't stop happening, right? That continues. The difference between a child making a mistake in art and a professional artist like me making a mistake in art is just that I've done it about a million times and I'm used to it. So I would talk through different solutions, and some of the kids gave some solutions. How do I fix this drip? Well, I can try and rub it down, but it's on there pretty good. I could cover it with something else, with some collage. I could add more drips all around to make it look intentional, but I already put so much work into this painting. I don't want to just throw it away, right? And I don't need to. There's no reason for that. And I hope that kind of opened something up for some of the kids, because that's an issue with all of us for art making, right? You have something in your head, it doesn't come out the right way, you make a mistake, and I just want them to know that that's part of the process, totally normal. So with that, we would begin. And um, another thing we did was the PTO is so great at this school, and they sent out a list to all of the families with dates that I would be there solo. So on the dates I was there solo, parents could sign up for those dates and come and volunteer. And that was super fun. It was great to get some of those parents in there, to meet them, and some of them were artists themselves. So it was really cool hearing about that. Um, Another artist was Mrs. Brown, right? Mrs. Brown is the art teacher. And I forgot to mention that when we were first developing this program, it was said we could do it in a breakout room. There might be a classroom that I could kind of like take over for everything. But once we realized, okay, we have funding, how are we doing this? Dr. Marcus spoke with the art teacher, Allie Brown, and she was open to welcoming me and this program into her art class. So that worked out really well too, because we just scheduled the kids along with their normal art schedule. There was, I think, 2 classes that had to be shifted because of like a half day or a day I couldn't go or something, but it was basically the kids just saw me when they would normally have art, and that worked out really well. So we're in Mrs. Brown's art classroom, and we used her scissors. That was the one material I didn't buy. Usually whenever I'm going somewhere and I need a lot of scissors, they have them, and, non-expendable material. So that was a good one to borrow. But everything else I brought in, and beautiful art room. And so that was a good opportunity also. Um, I wasn't sure. I don't think I said it in every class, especially the first ones. But at some point, I asked Mrs. Brown, did the kids know about your art background? Because Mrs. Brown had a career as an interior designer before she decided to switch over and be an art teacher in the schools. So that was really fun, actually, that a lot of the kids didn't know that. So I could tell them, Mrs. Brown right here has another art job. What's an interior designer? We would talk about that. We would talk about her specialty was residential. That's where you live, designing how you want a home to feel, how you want it to work, how you want to get around, how you can best use your classroom. I mean, your home. But then I would direct them to look around your classroom. In the classroom, she has the different art tables and are color labeled so that, we can say red table, orange table. But the way they're identified is there are silver paint cans strung from the ceiling, look like they're tipping, and it has a sheer color fabric pouring out. So it looks like the sheer paint pouring out. Gorgeous, but I was able to direct the kids to look at that. This is the work of an interior designer. When Mrs. Brown came in here, this art room was set up differently. It didn't have all these things. Look at these different things Mrs. Brown has put on the walls. This is the classroom of an interior designer. I am telling you, if I worked in a school, my class would not look like that. It would be a hot mess, okay? I mean, look behind me. It would look like my studio. I have stuff everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to cut it there and turn this into a two-part episode. This is a lot of information, and so far we've gone over how to fund a program like this in the state of Massachusetts, how to find a client, right? Working within my genuine community. I'm always building community connections, and I had an idea of a program that might work for a particular participant. Getting that initial meeting, expressing my ideas while being open and genuinely curious about the needs of the client and incorporating their ideas, how to tentatively get a bunch of people on board, all the visiting artists, which we'll get into later. Um, kind of getting all your ducks in a row, but also finding that balance of not getting everyone too excited, not getting too into the weeds when you're still waiting for funding, you're still in the pitch phase. Um, we talk about what happens once you receive the grant, locking things in, hiccups that have come along the way with finance. We talked about booking and launching the program, first days on site. And in my next episode, we're going to be talking about the second and sometimes third and fourth visits that I do in the class with the various groups that come to see me. And we are going to talk about the family night event, sort of what this all is building towards, and something we're talking about with all the students. We're building towards a family night where they're going to get to come and share this experience with their families as well. And one other thing I'm going to touch on is how I am bringing this program into other communities as well, because this is a multi-site program, even though the clients don't necessarily need to work together or travel to each other's sites. But by the nature of how I've developed it, everyone is working with the same materials and on many of the actual same cards. So check back in for part 2 of this episode, and we will dive a little bit deeper and wrap up the project. All right. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions on grant writing, community building, how to build programs like this, you can always reach out to me. My email is beth@creativepathwaysproject.com, and you can find me on Instagram. Pop into my DMs. It's at Creative Pathways Project. All right. Hope y'all are doing great, and come back for the second part of this episode.